Back in the days when I was young, I'm not a kid anymore. But some days I sit and wish I was a kid again. Back in the days when I was young, I'm not a kid anymore. But some days I sit and wish I was.
You're in the gray zone. I'm Mark Ebner. I'm an award-winning journalist, a New York Times best-selling author, and I'm a private investigator. And I'm here with Dr. David Robinson, podcasting at you from the crow's nest of the HMS Bounty in Koreatown, USA. Reminder, this is listener-supported podcasting, no advertising. It's your show, and I invite you to help keep it going by shoveling me some cash via PayPal, markebner59@gmail.com. Venmo, the same, or you can subscribe to the show at patreon.com. Many thanks to the fabulous Los Angeles artist Joe O'Neill and my brother in ink chronicler of all things Rhode Island over at quahog.org, Christopher Scott Martin, for executive producing this, our final episode of Season 2 from the Gray Zone. Do you enjoy art? Frankly, I wouldn't know fine art if it crawled up my ass, came out my mouth, and did all the talking for me. I mean, I guess I have somewhat of a pop sensibility that can appreciate a random Warhol or a Basquiat sighting. But for me, whatever pop flavor I get trying to appreciate art for art's sake dissolves off my tongue like the contents of a pixie stick. In other words, art's really not my beat until there's a crime involved. Which reminds me of the time, I don't know, mid-double-aughts, when I was researching my hardcore Hollywood crimer, 6 Degrees of Paris Hilton. Well, here's a refresher on that. 6 Degrees started as a Radar magazine feature featuring a cat named Darnell Riley, who had committed his first double homicide in a jewelry store heist gone south at 14 years old. Fresh out of juvie with a clean record, Darnell was the guy who famously got Girls Gone Wild goon Joe Francis at gunpoint and on video to lie face down, pants around his ankles, on his own California king in his Bel Air estate with a vibrating dildo riding the crest of his buttocks, ordered by Darnell Riley to repeat after him, "My name is Joe Francis. I'm from Boys Gone Wild, and I like to take it up the ass." I saw that tape. Well, I also saw the R. Kelly tape of him pissing on an underage girl. I don't know why I brought that up. I guess I see a lot of tapes.
I was going to say, it sounds like you're about to launch into an ad for a new Time Life collection.
The rape tapes. Oh, for God's sakes. Well, I did see that tape, and the guy who showed it to me was Darnell's defense attorney, notorious Hollywood drug lawyer Ronald Richards. He showed it to me repeatedly. I guess they were going to try and use that tape as some sort of half-cocked defense, saying that this was some sort of S&M role-playing between Darnell Riley and Joe Francis. Well, that didn't work. But Ronald Richards, a guy who used to be a real gunslinger back in the day, he never took deals. He always fought it out in court. Well, he did manage to cut a deal for what could have been a life sentence for kidnapping with gun enhancements. Ronald got it down to 10 years and change in Corcoran State Prison. Maximum security up there in the Tules. That would be Tulare County, alongside such notable incarcerated luminaries like Charlie Manson, Sirhan. Anyway, I knew Darnell had a story to tell, and he was waiting for me when I first showed up to interview him in that prison, where he told me about a 6-year period where he was running things illicit in and around young Hollywood as the self-proclaimed Pope of the Sunset Strip. In his own words, I was the man that the heavy hitters would call in to clean up a messy situation. In the vernacular of Hollywood, I'm what some call an expediter or a fixer. I was a bachelor of the blacker arts: bribery, blackmail, beatdowns, criminal threats, terrorist threats, extortion, mutilation, and good old-fashioned frame-ups. Quite the resume, eh? Anyway, stolen art would always bubble up in that window where he and his unfortunate partner, career drug dealer Will Wright, performed in. They did their little show up and down Sunset Boulevard, and that show became the basis of 6 Degrees of Paris Hilton. Check it out. It's still available on Amazon.com. It holds up. This Will Wright character, thanks to my cooperation with the feds, and you have to remember, as a crime writer, I have a license to rat. Will is now about halfway through a 13-year stretch in the New York State system on drug trafficking charges. Well, Will Wright got a wild hair one day in Hollywood, and he lifted a Warhol painting from the wall of Hollywood producer Frank Mancuso Jr.'s Beverly Hills office. Warhol paintings come up a lot in 6 Degrees of Paris Hilton. The first one was right above Joe Francis's head in his West Side Girls Gone Wild offices, where I did a side gig field producing an interview with the dildo recipient for VH1. Not surprisingly, the Warhol painting was, again, not surprisingly, that of a dollar sign. Now, the one Darnell's partner ripped off Frank Mancuso's wall was, again, not surprisingly, Warhol's Paramount Pictures logo painting. Made sense. Mancuso Jr.'s father was a former Paramount studio chief. Well, long story short, in the course of my book research, I discovered where Will Wright had fenced that stolen Warhol. A high-end Beverly Hills adjacent gallery. And I managed to trace that painting to a gallery they sold it to down in Miami. So, armed with that information and my license to rat, I rang up the Art Crimes Division of the Los Angeles Police Department. Now, at the time, the LAPD Art Crimes Division was basically a two-man operation, and one of them was a woman, Detective Nancy Lazarus. Now, I'm thinking this was a slam-dunk art theft case I was handing her. I mean, I was giving her the stolen painting's provenance, the thief's identity, Will Wright, and its current location, a Miami art gallery. Slam dunk? Not so fast. Oddly, the case was never solved because art crime detective Nancy Lazarus, well, she blew me off. Weird, right? Well, little did I know that Nancy Lazarus was, at that very moment I rang her up, being investigated for murder by her colleagues in robbery homicide right across the hall in Parker Center. Well, in May of 2012, a few years after the publication of 6 Degrees, a California judge sentenced disgraced detective Nancy Lazarus to 27 years to life in prison for murdering her ex-boyfriend's wife in a jealous rage 20 years prior. Yep. Stephanie Eileen Lazarus, 52, was convicted of biting and shooting Sherry Rasmussen in her townhouse in the Van Nuys neighborhood of Los Angeles in 1986. And the victim, Sherry Rasmussen, was only in her 20s at the time. Well, no wonder she had no time for me and a pesky stolen Warhol in 2008. But 6 Degrees of Paris Hilton was about a 6-year shakedown of young Hollywood. And whether I was investigating purloined Warhols or priceless pieces of local billionaire Brandon Davis, the guy they used to call Greasy Bear, you know, the stuff he was ripping off his wealthy parents' walls to support his dueling drug and gambling habits, well, all that paled in comparison to the nosebleed level art scene I stumbled into just last week at the Impressionist and Modern Art auction at Sotheby's in New York City. Clip 1, Doctor.
$3.5 million. At $3,500,000, $3,800,000, at $3,800,000, at $3,800,000, $4 million. Thank you. Latest bid, $4 million. Latest bid, $4 million. $4,200,000, $4,200,000, $4,500,000, $4,500,000, $4,800,000, $4,800,000. Give me five. $4 million, $5 million. Latest bid, $5 million. $5 million on the aisle. Latest bid, $5 million I have on the aisle, and I can sell it at $5 million only, and this is any advance, at $5 million. You were done. Fair warning, and selling at $5 million.
Sold at $5 million. Well, that wasn't exactly the clip I wanted to play. The one that I really wanted the gavel going down on was the Sotheby's record-breaking bid for Amedeo Modigliani's price. You know, I mean, at the time, they wouldn't even announce what this was worth. A nude called Nu Couché that was gavelled out for $139 million. That was a Sotheby's record, and I just stumbled into that. I mean, mind-blowing. But I had my eye on the Namad family, father and sons, high-end art dealers. They were there as a family team, sitting front row center for that very auction. And, coincidentally, that very day, one Heli Namad, guy's about 39 years old, was getting released from a 3-year federal probation on gambling charges, following a short stint in the feds for the same. In the feds or, maybe state prison. Anyway, it was Otisville. Look it up. Google is your friend. In 2013, high-flying New York art dealer Heli Namad, a Syrian Jew, admitted to leading a multi-million-dollar international gambling ring in a case that also involved Russian mobsters and Hollywood poker princess Molly Bloom, who set up games for movie stars like Matt Damon and Namad.